Welcome to the Master of Orion Very Difficult Choice mod video demonstration. I found that many people prefer to engage with the video fully if there is a voiceover present, instead of the captions. Even if it's the text-to-speech version, so without further ado let's dive into the action. Scenario unfolding before your eyes represents potential situation when your split planet killing task force attacks moderately defended, not essential system behind the enemy lines. Such thing is possible once you outmaneuvered opponent, but he raised the small protection fleet with the knowledge that you have missiles and heavy fighters as your main weapons. Most of the times you won't meet any resistance there except starbase and planetary structures. Spatial Compressor's cruiser is interchangeable with Warp Dissipator cruiser, so that fact is not relevant for the provided example since cruiser dies anyway in both scenarios. In this part of the video I will show what will happen to your ships without reinforced hulls against mutation to plus 25 attack mass driver point defense destroyers. You will also witness why mass drivers are better than fusion beams at every goal except point-blank range 0 missiles or fighters killing. Most of the ships have cloaking field against potential turn 1 heavy beam version and starbase. The goal of the support ship is to lay antimatter torpedoes to protect your vulnerable fighter and missile stacks. The remaining ones will be used to control opponent torpedo damage dealer that wants to get point-blank at our tractor ships or heavy fighter ships. To hide stacks behind torpedoes for all subsequent turns you have to line them up with the planet center. Refer to glue and stacking rules in my articles. We do the double torpedo strategy in order to match the missiles and torpedoes position on the end of turn 2. This ship design isn't optimal, because non-upgraded torpedoes will do for the support role, and you can fit in one more damage-dealing version for control of the enemy ships. If you read my much more detailed article, then you know that heavy fighters and all flyers in general move 2 squares less than their specified value during the turn 1, but for cruiser hull exclusively they only move 1 squares less. Which means that heavy fighter ships should be separated from their target by 15 squares, instead of 14 to connect at the end of turn 1. They can't be targeted unless opponent has spherical weapons and hits the different ship when stack stays in the vicinity, or ship moves to separate fighters from the torpedoes, or self-destructs to force fighters into changing the target to separate them in this way. There is another risky route I will display in part 3. Stay tuned for the only real, although risky, counter to antimatter torpedo hiding strategy. We will apply tractor beams next. It takes 4 to reduce cruiser speed to 0. Move points drain affects ships immediately for the whole round, even after all tractor ships destroyed. There will be no immobilization status, and movement and turning action cost will be restored to default values, but move points will stay drained. Beam defense penalty will apply only at the beginning of the next turn if tractor ships stay alive. We have to control Spatial Compressor cruiser immense power for the extra reason that he can separate fighters from the torpedoes' protection, which makes them an easy prey for point defense weapons. Retreat action happens in the start of the next turn, while fighters move on the end of the previous one in case you wonder what's gonna happen. If we had 5 missiles per rack, we could glue 2 on the first turn and stay close to the stack. Next turn we will glue 2 more shots making it double the size without stack suffering extra missiles or torpedoes turn 1 weight. You heard it right, new missiles added to the stack will basically act like fighters. Draken torpedo carrier has one goal in mind. He want to get in point blank and turn the ships into the mincemeat, but he is controlled by incoming torpedoes. Missiles and torpedoes move only when their target move on the turn 1 and not inch more. Torpedoes are fast enough, 22.5 squares first 2 turns, to block Draken advancement. But he still want to do that to launch torpedoes closer and to be reacquired as the closest target by heavy fighters once they destroy the cruiser ship. Cruiser waits to get released from tractor beams, while planetary defense's targeting is arbitrary since AM torps won't reach the ships in time. Depending on your opponent initiative versus yours, it might be worth to include battle scanner to outspeed tractor ships and retreat back before they have a chance to move. Many players don't think about such thing and don't put scanners on non-beam type ships, so you will be safe most likely. To counter that, build 4 frigates with tractor beams instead of 2 destroyers, because opponent might have frigates with tractors of their own that will control your tractor ships first by reducing their speed in half, or completely nullifying if applying to frigates. Controlling PD ships with heavy fighters or missiles is counterintuitive, but it's possible in some scenarios. You will force them to use PD beam on non-priority targets. You don't have such opportunities with the small fleet task forces that mainly exist to block the systems or attack the planets without starbases. Starbases attacks are possible, but you need slightly bigger fleets of course, because you can hide your stacks behind torpedoes too. That means that opponent point defense ships get a free double turn. I show that stacks covered by torpedoes can't be targeted. Let's also see how mass drivers shred through 10 beam attack minus beam defense difference, which translates into 50% to hit for each auto-fire shot. All flyers have hitboxes in the middle and at the top left corner. Sometimes to target flyers with heavy fighters, you only have a choice to aim at the top left. Notice that ships get immobilized much more easily without reinforced hull. That happens because you don't have as much structure health buffer, and many damage points going towards the systems like shields, computers, drives, weapons. That's another reason why reinforced hull is so popular, especially on the bigger ship classes. You should also press wait after firing your shot if the chance to board or capture arises later in the turn. Same can be said for planetary defenses, since you don't want to shoot at potentially immobilized targets. Be aware that if your ships won't be able to capture the target in one swoop, it's better to finish it off with the last ship. The reason is simple. Stats don't recalculate till the next turn unless you destroyed weapons, shields, lightning field or warp dissipator. Drives, computers, beam defense specials will still be active, so ship will move in the original order to the full extent and will be able to fire point blank before self-destructing. Master of Orion tries to simulate simultaneous combat with the regular beam's fire of opportunity and stat recalculation at the start of the next turn. Strategic combat does full simultaneous, so ships fire at each other at the same time. As you can see, fighters move after the Draken indeed. Destroyer speed is 20 at 1 free space left with antimatter drives, and heavy fighters will be moving 16 squares on average, so they won't catch up unless you cornered yourself. We'll have to retreat anyway, because antimatter torps chasing you down at 24 squares on average. I say on average because first 2 turns for fighters and 3 turns for missiles and torpedoes don't adhere to the listed speed, as you already know from my article. Notice that many fighters were left alive after spatial compressor's automatic trigger. Spherical damage is not very good against fighters because they have high health, so only 38% to destroy each separate fighter in the stack for 4 compressors. All fighters have an extra 50% chance roll to evade spherical damage altogether. Immobilized targets that gonna perform retreat at the start of the next turn will count as destroyed. Note that players loses control of captured ships right away, and they become a legal target. You will see the usage of that mechanic very soon. If your opponent is telepathic, they can control the captured ships in the same combat round. You will rarely see that in VDC though, since telepathic will be realistic only for 2 open pix mutation races. We didn't have enough damage to kill barely alive destroyer. Fortunately for them, security stations were still intact. Raiding action damages structures 30 health per marine at maximum, as well as 3 systems, including weapons, at the best roll. No health bonuses from high gravity and powered armor apply, unlike for capture action and ground combat. Security station are must-have for many ships due to the fact that raiding is overpowered, which means that you need as much ground combat advantage as possible. I decided to show scenario where we went greedy by moving forward to incapacitate another ship. We do that because opponent goal is to retreat this turn after hypothetical warp dissipator cruiser death. One might ask why retreat on the second turn when missiles will be only halfway to the planet at the end of turn 2? The answer is when all the attacker ships destroyed before the end of turn 2, what will happen is missiles, torpedoes and fighters move to their full capacity and the combat ends there. But retreat action happens at the beginning of the next turn, so if at least one ship, even immobilized, successfully retreated, Master of Orion would think that ships were present at turn 3. Therefore, all flyers get another turn, ultimately allowing missiles to hit the planet at the end of turn 3. There is a way to punish that. Strategy 1 will cover in the end of part 2 and part 3, and risk won't be high. We proceed to self-destruct immobile ships so they won't be captured the next turn and launch the last torpedo at one captured tractor destroyer. It will have to catch up abusing the same retreat logic I just described. Torpedo gonna move 0 squares at the end of this turn, but 22.5 for the next retreat action turn. Chase Draken destroyer had to retreat since he will be cornered next turn with enough move points of antimatter torps to hit it at the end of the turn. Another reason is PD ships are free now to clear up more fighters. They have very low beam defense of 70 without pilot and helmsman leaders for minus ship defense races. PD weapons without damage dissipation like mass drivers can pick them off from the maximum distance, no problems. Furthermore, notice how the fact that you launched missiles from the proper positions exactly line up with the middle of the planet or star base allows you to hide missiles behind torps so they can't be targeted again. Fighters have slightly different mechanics. They can be hidden at turn 1, But in order to do so for turn 2 you have to launch them ahead of the torpedoes, and strategy works only against planets or immobilized ships. And for ships you want to hit turn 1 anyway, like I shown in this example. Don't leave yet. Wait for a splash at least. They say that Big Bang created a life, but after this hit-and-run assault planet lost 5 population and half of the infrastructure. On top of that you can redirect back for blockade, plus get more backup if needed. I will also cover how to counter this exact missile spot, which no one knows if they haven't read Dars's article on point defense, advanced calculations and mechanics on the Good Old Games forums. Here's the same retreat spot. What you want to do is waste all your move points in order to end up near missile stack, so AI won't chase ships that left on the field. Press auto combat to abuse the fact that AI can target any part of the stack. Unfortunately, it's stupid enough to prioritize bigger missiles if you place a mission guidance system upgrade on the nuclear or Mercurite missiles, and cover them by Xeon or Pulsar missiles. The reason why you use tractor ships beside controlling is the fact that they will be posted forward to protect stacks against AI auto combat fire, which is still risky if used when many ships left in combat. I tell you why next. In the spot where heavy fighters protected by torpedoes about to hit cruiser, you can move forward if there is no tractor ships. You move to the range where your ships can see the fighters, but can't reach opponent ships. That means that AI auto combat will shoot at fighters, but due to the connection lags and fast animations you won't be able to cancel auto combat consistently enough, which will cause way higher damage than one cruiser. Placing EMG upgrade on the lower grade missiles is scary if you won't be going for point blank range, because spherical damage heavily punishes that strategy due to low health and the fact that each missile in the stack checked separately. Remember that point-blanking spatial compressors still triggers auto-fire, unlike pulsars. Here's I show the corner case of 3 frigates blocking the system. 2 leaders placed on the destroyers because that's the ships with veteran crew that got their status after killing monsters many turns before. If opponent uses spatial compressors, might do the trap of drawing friendly fire before they have a chance to put them on hold. If you read my articles you know that frigates have the extra range for the point-blank unlike all the other hull sizes, so you need to cross 28 squares as attacker or even less as defender. I show this property in the last example. Thank you for watching the video till the end. Check the video description for the Discord link leading towards Master of Orion community and my articles, and leave the comments with your questions if you have any.